everyone. We're doing this again, trying it out with our host, Rosea and Andrea. So I'll make sure to add them right now. Okay, cool. Hello. All right, there's one. Andrea's popping up right now.
Hello.
All right, one works so far, so we'll wait. And if not, I'll try to add her again.
Yeah, if not, she can just come and join me out here.
Sounds good. Yeah. Hey, Ro. Hey, Julian.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Jillian and I were just playing Magic.
Oh, how did that go?
We're testing out new decks, so
Sweet.
it's just learning how to use it. It's like one of the most complicated games because every deck is so different. Like the card, basically, you just follow what it says.
Yeah.
And so,
Nice.
yeah, Hey.
She joined already? Okay, cool. Let's see. Invite. Cool. It says waiting for Rosea. Well, I have my candle right here, and then like when I said Rosea, I guess I took a breath with my nose, and it just like did this concoction or something. Like it went like it was air. My
Wow.
breathing is not that strong. I guess it's funny because I'm laughing. I guess wow, really cool candle magic, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty.
Wow.
I
What
love
which one is that one?
this one's called Midnight Woods, and it's natural coconut wax blend. So it's pretty
Ooh,
cool.
okay.
Yeah.
Does any
What
of
about
the coconut come through?
yeah, the coconut definitely comes through.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's one of the newer candles that I sent an intention for like peace. So I usually, hi Ellie. I usually turn it on during like yoga or when I'm meditating at night. But I brought it
Mm-hmm.
out today to,
Okay.
help us with our healing.
Yes.
Um,
Talking about surrendering. And that's what we're doing right now. Surrendering to this change right here. All right, I'm gonna remove my headphone.
well,
Hello.
hi.
Here. It was doing the same thing, so that's what it was doing to you too then.
Yeah.
Trying to request to join and it didn't work. Anyways, yeah. I'm here.
How you doing today? How's your day going?
It's going good. Same thing as what I think I caught a little bit about what Andrea was saying earlier, but just yeah, like, just transitioning back into from vacation mode to life mode, normal routine life. So getting used to that. And yeah, I'm doing okay. A lot of like mixed emotions. I feel like there's so much transition and like just
Mm-hmm.
not it like really want to focus on just like that process of like, grieving changes and going into new ones kind of thing. So that's kind of where I'm at right now too.
Yeah, a lot of surrendering
Surrender.
because that's what we're here to talk about today. And I feel like that's where I'm at is like, okay, I am having all of these emotions coming up, but I'm also trying to like, acknowledge where I learned those to react in that way and to explore a little bit more of where those are coming from to see if they're mine or if they were conditioned. And
Mm-hmm.
because I those conditions like do create real emotions. Uh, it's just yeah, having to sit with that and being with that and being like, okay, is that mine or is that not? And there's just so many times where that comes up consistently.
Totally, totally. Yeah, no. Surrendering is definitely something that I know I've been really trying to focus on recently, and just like seeing where I'm at with it, and like Andrea was saying, where does it come from? The way that I react to, you know, a lot of things, like control is such a big thing, and it's really subtle. Like I didn't, I know I felt like at first I was like, oh, I'm not like really a controlling, like I don't feel like a controlling person or whatever in that case. And then really just started realizing like, oh wow, like I actually don't know how to go with the flow very well, even though I thought I did. So I think it's sometimes like the subtlety of it. It's not like this like full on like, oh, I'm gonna control everything in you, and sometimes it's so subtle. And so I noticed that about myself too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Any comments from you on where
No,
you're at?
yeah, definitely. I'm like nodding my head because I'm like, yes, conditions, definitely limiting beliefs of like what I've learned and what I need to do and the control. I mean, I totally agree with everything that you're saying, especially with like the control sense. Many times, you know, society, in my opinion, pretty much expects things of you. Like, I'll go ahead and in my personal story of expectations, I'll talk more a little bit about how I'm dealing with graduate school, how I'm dealing with the trauma of education and like the communication back and forth. But in a sense, I feel like everything always feels like it relies on me, you know, like if I don't do this exact same thing or like in this exact same way, A, B, or C, then I feel like I can't predict the outcome. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a lot of the times it's like I put these preconditions of like this is what I'm expecting, and then yet again, like because I don't know how to surrender, it makes that emotion much more heightened and much more like harder, challenging for me to kind of release that and let that go. So surrender to me is a very hard concept. It doesn't come easy. I feel like it's a bicycle on training wheels. Like right now, I'm on my training wheels, where I'm learning how to surrender and by using different types of modalities, which I'll go ahead and conclude with one of the modalities that I use to kind of help me in the process as I'm learning how to ride this new bicycle of surrender. So yeah,
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
for sure.
Very it resonates in so many ways, of where I'm at too. And I know like the definition of surrendering is very like, you know, kind of like it feels like giving up, you know, is what it feels like sometimes. It's like, oh, I'm giving up, because that's kind of the conditioning that I was talking about. Oh, it's giving up, but it's more so letting, like, it's more similar to letting go. Like, okay, like it's just a flow of like surrendering to just like whatever is going to be in it. Like I'm not going to work hard or continue to like put in my 2 cents or my effort in. It's more so the for me, like I struggle so much with the feeling of like kind of what you were saying too, Cynthia. It's for me, it was just, it felt like a survival skill, a coping skill when I was younger, to really like make sure that everyone's doing okay, make sure that like, you know, because that's a huge part of it is it's not necessarily all the time controlling. Like for me, it wasn't controlling like things or like things that were happening. More so it was more so for me, it felt like, oh, like I really wanted to make sure that everyone was okay and regulated so that I could feel okay and safe and good to go. And so it felt it feels like, oh, it's not a control. That's why it was so hard to understand that's what I was doing for a really long time, until like I'm like, oh, every time it comes up, like even like, you know, like wanting to travel, even traveling with a big group of people, that's like the most recent example of just like, oh, I want to make sure, like I need to be like on, you know, like on this level so that I can make sure everyone's good. And like it's just such an old thing that I'm like, wow, like that's really exhausting to do so much of the time, and my body just like reacts so much to it. And I'm noticing the difference now, because I feel like now I'm able to be around a healthy group of people who can, you know, really like who I can talk to about this. And also I feel like I'm working on just being you know, more transparent and out there about like, oh hey, like, you know, it's just a lot for me, or you know, I'm wanting to make sure that everyone's okay, and you know, and I don't have to do that all the time. So it's just kind of a thing I'm understanding so much.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah. It it's a constant opportunity to practice it like every moment in my life, and I've felt like in letting go of trying to predict everything, I've it's opened up much more space and much more freedom, and more love, I think, and like allowance and acceptance through that, because I'm just allowing myself to meet that moment and not like predict the future moments that then take away from being in that present moment, because it's like it's different from like planning,
Right.
or you know, goal setting and things like that, where like that's intentional time to plan for that, to you know, achieve something. But I'm not like trying to, like she was, her example of taking care of other people's feelings by trying to predict how they're going to feel or interpret how they're feeling, because oftentimes it's not even like asking the person's, just like based on what we think is going on, and oftentimes it's like projections, you know, of our own stuff.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like there's just so much more freedom with letting that go.
Yeah.
And like I sleep better. I just like the bare minimum thing of you know how valuable sleep is, and like I just sleep so much better, where I used to struggle to sleep so much, because I would constantly just replay things in my head, and then try and predict what was going to happen and how I was going to respond, and that was just so exhausting.
Yeah, it's a good thing that you said the planning thing also, of where we're you know, we can plan for something and like be intentional with that time. And I think that's the other thing where I'm working on the control thing, is like, okay, like I have to meet this like planned deadline at all costs, like even if I have to like drive, you know, super far and like do all this crazy stuff. And it's like, okay, no, like don't have to do that, you know. And I'm just learning that that's the surrendering part, where it's like, okay, I planned and I anticipated I would have really wanted it to be at this point of a deadline or a time frame or whatever the case may be. And yeah, there's, you know, I can work on some time management. I'm not saying, you know, like that it's not, you know, great in that way, but I think it's that balance of just like, okay, like, you know, maybe I didn't plan so well, I can work better at it next time, but this is what this experience is going to be like. And I have to be okay with it. And so I'm just like working through that process of not having to, it's really perfectionist for me. It comes out of just like, okay, like I have to meet this deadline at any cost and this thing at any cost. And it's like, I'm learning to anticipate and to feel, and also to kind of feel it earlier on, right? Where it's like, okay, like not wait till like the last minute where I'm like, okay, I can't do this, but more so like, hey, I'm anticipating this is not going to work out well for me, and communicating that to whomever it is that I'm doing the deadline with, or whatever the case may be. So it's a battle. It's really exhausting to get through that part. But I love the question that you all posed too about, you know, what is it in your life that you're surrendering to at the moment, or working on surrendering to.
And please do share, as we are going to be, I don't know if we went over the definition of surrender, right? But that's something that we wanted to go ahead and do. And then we're going to be sharing like our personal story as well. I know we kind of talked about examples, but I definitely want to dive in a little deeper, if that's okay with you guys.
Totally.
Cool. Sorry, so Andrea, did you share the surrender definition or no?
No, not yet. No.
Okay, cool.
No. So yes, so surrender, in in the dictionary, what I looked up, it's defined as an allowance to releasing control over a situation, person, place, thing, some sort of feeling. It's associated to so many different things, but that was the very simple definition. But I think that there are many different cultural understandings of what surrender might look like, and expressions of what surrender might look like for people.
Oh my gosh. Sorry. A little pigeon dove like landed on our balcony.
Oh. Up for that. You know me and my animal totems. We are talking about surrender, so I'm gonna look it up and talk about that.
That pigeon's on our balcony.
I hope it's okay. Like, it looked like it was falling into it. Sorry, I'm distracted. It just was scratching right there. Just like, what is that? So I think that surrender for each person may look different, and at different points in your life it may look different as well. And so I think sometimes it can look really maybe quiet, and other times it can be really expressive. Maybe other times it's more fluid, and you're like really able to flow with it, and other times it's like there's a lot of resistance. So I think it's just it's looking at what your relationship currently is with surrendering, with allowing that release of control, of anticipation.
Right. Yeah. And the difference too, like it's so, and I think Andrea was mentioning too, like the cultural aspect and the difference of like the way that surrendering is perceived is like, oh, you're a quitter, at least in my, you're a quitter, you're, giving up and all this stuff. And it's very interesting to see like the differences too, and just like what letting go means. Letting go does not mean I'm not going to do anything ever again. I'm just going to float through life and not, that's not what it means, at least in my perception. It's more so like, hey, I don't have to do all this prep work and this like, anticipation and like the body, getting my body so hyped up in that way for that reason. And that, taking me out of the present really is what it is. It just pulls me out of the present. I'm just like, I know there's so many times I've sat there and I'm just like, wow, like, I don't know how I'm not showing it in my face, or like maybe it's a coping mechanism I've developed, but I'm like really like in my head and trying to worry and figure things out. I'm so stressed out when it's like, okay, like let's just let that go. Like we don't need to do that. So yeah.
What about for you?
It's honestly a challenging thing. I know it seems conceptually like even talking about the definition, but I feel like it does have to do a lot with cultural upbringing and even like how you're raised in your household. Yeah, like with all due respect, with like even my mom as a single parent, I feel like, you are who you are and your environment definitely shapes you. And so the surrendering process, I feel like we were modeled by my mom. She was very emotionless. Until this day, she is emotionless. And like the way we communicate, even if it's our problems, like there's no communication. It's like, she'll call me once in a while. She'll be like, oh, you're stressed, huh? Because you haven't talked to me or you haven't come over. And I'm just like, yeah. But that's like a message that I've received ever since I was little. Like, just don't talk about it, right? And so that's why surrendering for me, it's so hard and so exhausting because I relate to Rosea, where it's like growing up in a single parent household, like I felt like I was the parent taking care of my sister Jess. Hey Jess. And just like it was very different because I had that like I guess mom role, like mature role, but then how does a little girl learn how to take on the mom role? And yet by modeling like, oh, we don't talk about stuff like that, like we just stay quiet about it and you just put it under the rug. So I feel like it's catching up to me now that I'm in my 30s and I'm like, I want to change, I want to heal, and this is no longer serving me. Like not knowing how to surrender is no longer serving me because I lose sleep over that. Like I struggle with anxiety, so I understand when Andrea is saying like I'm literally in bed thinking. It takes me like 2 hours to go to sleep because that's how like my body is like stimulating like still when I go to bed. It's like okay, but it's gotten a lot better because I like do practices that help me kind of like calm the body, which is something that I'm not used to too in terms of like surrendering because I'm always just in my head, I call it, and I feel it. I don't know if y'all feel it, but I feel it right here. Like I feel a tension just in my head all the time when I'm just overthinking and I'm exhausted, and it's kind of like a headache, you know? And so when I'm in bed and like I think about that, it's like it's hard to me to go for me to go to sleep. So that's why I do practices like yoga because I'm so used to being in my head all the time as a little girl, and I don't know how to you know, pay attention to my body. Now that I'm getting older, I know how to pay attention to my body because I'll do yoga, and then that gives me a different way or modality to deal with like the stress because I'm not just focusing in my head. I'm paying attention to, okay, where's my arm going, like across, you know, my left foot, or am I reaching like, you know, to the floor with both my hands? And it's like I'm not too much in my head, I'm more in my body. And so that to me is more of a balanced way for me to learn how to surrender because it's so hard for me to surrender since I'm always in my head. Yeah, with anxiety and you know, the ADHD and stuff. So kind of going off, you know, with my personal story about grad school, it's so traumatizing, you know, kind of even sitting, you know, and getting feedback from a professor. I'm writing 100-page thesis. That's not very easy. I'm like pretty much a week from some like from getting a signature from like the department heads, but I'm here still struggling like editing my paper and like getting feedback from my professor. And it's like every time I get feedback I like shut down sometimes because it's critical feedback, and once again we never talked about that in my family. So how are you going to put someone in critical feedback where it's like we just are muted, we don't say much, you know? So yeah, it's hard, but I'm learning how to do it. And if anyone has any suggestions on what I can do to surrender, especially during school, or if you have any coping mechanisms, let us know in the chat because we are a community here and I definitely appreciate anything, even good vibes. So love y'all.
Really, thank you for sharing all of that.
Thanks for allowing us to witness where you're at and showing us, you know, the frustration and all the different emotions that you're feeling.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like that's what I'm hearing is it's complicated. Like you're appreciating like what you've learned and what you're getting out of this experience of dedicating yourself to this thesis that you've written, because like it's huge. It's amazing.
Yeah, killing it.
And yet, you know, it like being so triggering, so traumatizing, like the form of communication, like just that communication. It's not even like, you know, that specifically you're in education, which is certainly like a whole other trauma, like we talked about last week.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, like, for sure. But like, just even it comes down to that communication. Yeah, like it wasn't. And so much of that is built upon the surrendering of like, hey, this is where I'm at right now. Where are you at? And that being something that we do with each other.
Yeah. And it's like super strange because avoidance is something that I do instead of controlling. Like I tend to avoid until like the last minute. And I know my sister does too because she's told me. So once again, right? It's in the environment. It was learned. So
all of this together too. And that's the thing too. It's like I used to be like, oh, I'm just this. And I'm like, no, I'm actually this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this too. Because like I'm also, to me, avoidance is a form of control because I'm controlling that I'm not doing anything. Like I'm controlling the fact that I don't want to do this thing. So it's like, it's still a form of control in my opinion, because I'm like, oh yeah, I know I straight up did absolutely everything else than what I had to do, you know, because it's a coping skill. And on what you were saying too, like I really appreciate you talking about that. And I know we're going to wrap up in a little bit, but surrendering as an adult is so difficult because I've noticed that all of these other coping skills I used to have that did actually serve me so much, right, throughout my childhood and got me to where I am now, they're not working anymore. And so it's more so of like that, like surrendering of like, oh snap, like all of these things I've been doing for 20, I don't know how many years. I'm like, how old am I? But so many years, you know, and now hitting this like ginormous like, whoa, it's not working at all anymore. Like it's just like chaotic now, and feeling it more in my adulthood. And we did so many activities as children, as you know, growing up too, that like in a way was like therapeutic. Like props to my parents putting me in sports and softball, and like also just like you know, I think that's a part of the reason why I wanted to be so stimulated and go all the time too, because it was a way of like not really feeling what was going, like not letting things really sit and feel what was going on. And like now that, you know, I got older, I'm like, yeah, I still play softball, but it's like once a week, not like 5 times a week, or like, you know. And so I just noticed that also, is that, you know, a lot of folks are like, well, where is this coming from? And to be honest, like those, it's exploring like those things that we used to cope in growing up, and then now, you know, seeing like, oh man, that's what I used to do and that's not working anymore for me. Like I need to like really now focus on it. So it is very tough to surrender like later on, because these things I've been using for so many years to, and it worked. And so it's like, oh, I have to surrender to like not doing those things anymore and working on something else. So yeah.
Nothing. Thank you for sharing that. Did you have any last thoughts before I wrap up, Andrea? Either for your own self or no? Okay. Sorry, go ahead. Did I hear a respiro, or was that like a
Inhala.
inhala, respira, inhala?
Yeah.
So we're good to go?
I think I was just thinking through the things that we touched upon, and I feel like we covered a lot of it that can be further explored in our podcast.
Yes. And one last question is, what is blocking you from surrendering? Like what is like stopping that process from happening for you? Thank you.
Thank you.
On to you.
Awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and just wrap it up. So kind of something, an analogy that I kind of just thought of, surrender. It's not like a switch, or like a switch. It's not like a switch on or switch off type of thing. I think that it's an everyday process, right? And whatever is happening currently, like whatever obstacle, that's the stepping stone towards getting you to what you desire, right? So we're not saying like, you know, surrendering is either good or bad, but it's just a smoother way, in my opinion, to kind of get to know what works for you. You know, we're not saying like, oh, use all these modalities that we're using, it's going to help you. Like, you'll definitely know like what surrender looks like for you, whether that's through prayer, through sports, through art, like through reading. Everyone's different. But one of the things that I've been learning more and more of is mantras. And mantras are, like, for me, they're very powerful vibrations that bring powerful shifts of mind. And so some of the mantras that I have, I love it. It goes with the breathing in. So as you breathe in, we can try it. You breathe in surrender, and then breathe out, I trust.
I trust.
So once again, breathe in, I surrender.
Surrender.
Breathe out,
I
I trust. So that's a simple way just to calm your body and get your mind in tuned. Other ones that I found was, I'm surrendering the need to be perfect, and I'm focusing on being authentic. I'm surrendering the need to be perfect, and I'm focusing on being authentic. Another one is, I give grace and space and surrender to the miracle. So I give grace and space and surrender to the miracle. And I really like these last two. I release anything that does not serve me, knowing that there are better opportunities waiting for me. So I release anything that does not serve me, knowing that there are better opportunities waiting for me. And lastly, I release beliefs that do not serve me to become a powerful creator of what I desire. So I release beliefs that do not serve me, to become a powerful creator of what I desire. So yeah, those are the
Yeah.
mantras.
Powerful. Those are great. Oh my
Thank
Yes,
you.
definitely.
Before the chat, I listened to a meditation that was surrendering to creativity and very aligned with a lot of those mantras. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will
So,
see you, Cynthia. That way you can post it in the notes, maybe.
yeah, for sure. I can definitely post those in the notes. Yeah.
Yay.
Yay.
All for spread and being here with us.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to be here and to continue to show up and be with my crew and just like our like community. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So definitely you can DM us if you want to talk about this more. You can post comments on this video afterwards. We'd love to discuss it, hear what your thoughts are, maybe answer some of the questions that we've posed throughout the video.
Please.
And
share with your friends, with your family, and if you're like, hey, we need to talk about this, just share the video.
Listen to this. What do you think?
Yeah, well, thank you all for joining us. We're definitely super stoked to continue to do the lives on Wednesdays. Is a refresher for us even to come here and like talk to our family and our friends and just new people, and knowing that whatever we do say hopefully resonates with y'all, and that you take a little bit of whatever information that we're sharing as a token of appreciation and some for you to use it wisely later on if that's something that that is of use to you. But if you feel like any of our conversations have definitely been a synchronicity later throughout the week, give us a comment and be like, yo, you talked about this last week and I practiced this, or we definitely like to hear how you are all implementing it as well. So alrighty, until next time, until Wednesday.
Peace and light.
Food